Good morning, everybody. My name's Des Hutchinson. I'm the founder of Rainwater Tanks WA, the little company with the big name. We are only a pretty small company, but with that you get obviously personalised service. You'll get a lot of technical information. There's a few presenters who are going to talk about rainwater tanks today. I'm specifically going to talk to you about handmade, traditional style rainwater tanks. The type you see on the farm, the type you see in some of the older suburbs around. And I want to explore the application of that and see whether or not that translates to new architectural design and particularly renovations. It's a family company. That's my granddad's granddad, Cyril, just delivering his first couple of tanks over 150 years ago. The word icon is fairly loosely used in Australian society, but I think you'd have to agree that rainwater tanks and this traditional style rainwater tank across the landscape in Australia, across rural settings, commercial buildings, residential buildings, Australian rainwater tanks are an icon. They really are. You only have to drive out into the country anywhere or go into someone's backyard in some of the older suburbs and you'll see those rainwater tanks. And it gives you a real sense of Australian lifestyle. Interestingly, the transport system is exactly the same. That hasn't changed in 150 years. We're still delivering them in exactly the same way with a dray or an old truck. Public buildings, you might see some of your own relatives there, in the old schools. Water was such an important part of the lifestyle. Without water, it's the one thing that we can't live without. 4 days is all you can hope about without water. You can live on a Mars bar, you can live without food for up to 30 days, but without water in our society. And they knew that, and often the rainwater tank was put in ready to go before the building was even constructed. It's that important. There are many applications for storing water, many different styles, and interesting, I love that photo because we're now making the exact same tank, what I call a classic tall tank, and I'll show you a couple of applications of that now, or a bit later on. As I say, I love that photograph because the design hasn't really changed. The product has changed, the tools we the tools we use to make the tanks have changed and become more mechanised and that, but the style of the tank hasn't changed greatly in all that time. The Australian landscape is inextricably linked with these. Storing and saving rainwater is as important then as it is today, maybe even more important now. Leonardo da Vinci said that water is life. We move to modern shapes and modern styles and modern designs to suit our new lifestyles. Backyards are getting smaller, designs need to change, and our industry is evolving as well. Luke will talk to you a bit later on about sinking rainwater tanks and the different styles and that you can use. The terrestrial tanks, particularly for renovated areas when you've got an older home and they're putting an extension on, if it's an iron roof, it may well be that your customer's looking for an iron tank, a more traditional style terrestrial tank. The traditional styles are still popular. It really is an instance, and in this instance here we had to just talk to the customer. They really wanted to get a tank in, they wanted to start conserving water, they wanted to put a few tanks in around the home. Where was it going to go? So it was a matter of just finding a place for it. The great thing about our tanks is that we can design them and build them to a certain size. The product itself, you'll all be familiar in both architecture and in the building industry, that metal is a great building product. It's durable, it's strong, it heats up in the summer months but cools down quickly. As soon as the sun goes down, it cools back down quickly, which is why it has great thermal qualities. And BlueScope have now developed a product called galvanised aquaplate. So it's galvanised in that traditional look on the outside, but on the inside, as you can see here, there's a grey food-grade polymer called aquaplate. One of the big problems with rainwater tanks is that after 10 or 20 or 30 years, they were subjected to rust because they were storing water. Now with that food-grade polymer there, you get the benefits of a poly tank, that it won't rust because the water's not coming into contact with the metal in any way, shape or form inside the tank. But what do you do? When block sizes are getting smaller, can you put in a round tank still? Because one of the big questions that we get asked all the time is, I want to have a tank and I love that style, but we don't have the room. I can always go and find the room. But here's a cost comparison. A 1600 diameter, so 1.6 metre diameter tank by 2 rings high. The sheet metal that I showed you lying down on the floor before is about 800 millimetres wide. So you curve that into a circle, put the two on top of each other, and they go to about 1600 mil, less a little bit for overlap. And I've done a cost comparison on 3 different styles of tank here. 3,000 litre round tank, traditional style. A 3,000 litre tall tank where we're going 2 or 3 or 4 rings high. In this instance, 3 rings high takes you up to about 2,300 mil, which just gets you in under the eaves. You look at about 1,650 for one of those. Or the type of slimline tank. In this instance, a 3,000 litre slimline is 2.5 metres long, 850 millimetres wide, about 1,540 mil high, again 2 rings. And there's a significant difference in price, and I'll explain that why. I'll explain the reason for that why shortly. I'll take that one step further, and we build. This is our biggest style of slimline tank. I call this the Titanic. It's a big one. It's about 3.5, 3.6 metres long. It's nearly 1.5 metres wide and 2 rings high, as you can see. There's the join there. Now, in this instance, a 5,000 litre slimline is about $3,500 recommended retail price. Then you've got the installation, delivery, parts, stand, and fittings. But by thinking outside the square, and then that space there is about I had to narrow this photo a bit, but it's just about 2 metres 20, I believe. Here's an interesting comparison, because this space here is about 2 metres 40, only about 20 mil bigger. But in this instance, we put in 2 traditional round tanks. The customer originally came to us wanting a slimline tank. Similar footprint, similar clearance. You can still get your wheelbarrow up and down. You can still walk past there without bumping into the tank or knocking it. 6,000 litres, so 2 3,000 litre tanks at only $1,300. In this instance, it's $2,600 in total, plus delivery, install, etc. But we managed to save the customer about $1,000 and also get about 1,000 litres more water. So it really is a matter of working out the design and working out what's the most appropriate, because constantly we have customers coming back saying, I wish I had got a bigger tank. I wish I had got a bigger tank. You probably get the same thing, Luke. You know, they say we should get a bigger tank.